Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are going to be talking about the Supreme Court case that just happened. U.S. versus Rahimi. Now there's plenty of channels out there that have already covered the basics and gone over this, that, and the other thing dealing with the decision. And I'm sure those channels can do a way better job than me, like Guns and Gadgets, so on and so forth. What I'm going to cover today is, obviously, I'm going to give you a quick synopsis of the decision. And what's it mean for us here in Connecticut? Because Connecticut, again, is very unique to the 2A community when you put it against the background of the United States as a whole, right? Vast majority of states, 27 states, have a constitutional carry. They are definitely more pro 2A than, of course, everybody here in Connecticut. So before I get too deep into it, I just want to tell you, best way to support the channel is to definitely subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends, throw a couple of comments in the bottom. I'm usually down in the comments responding. Do a little trash talking depending on if you're snarky or not. That's the easiest way. You can also become a member of the Gun Guru page. The links are somewhere on the YouTube. You can do locals. You can do Patreon. Got a few Patreon members out there. And of course, you can buy merch. Everyone's favorite shirt is Guns and Ammo, because America runs on Guns and Ammo. That is available in the merch store. Link is down in the description below. Okay, let's get into the video. So, what is going on? What is U.S. versus Rahimi? Alright, so, the gist of it. And if I get something wrong, I'm sure you'll lambaste me in the comments. Rahimi had a restraining order. And he was supposed to basically turn over all his guns. Well, he got caught with guns at home, right? With a restraining order, you're not supposed to have guns or access to ammunition, so on and so forth. Even though there is no due process, we all know how that goes, all right? I'll get to how that plays into Connecticut. So, Rahimi admitted, yeah, I got the guns, blah, blah, blah. So he was arrested. Well, now fast forward to through all the appeals process up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court found in an 8-1 ruling, with Clarence Thomas being the only one that dissented, that yes, when you get a restraining order or things of that nature, you lose your Second Amendment right. And very rarely are you ever going to get it back, right? Because it is a disqualifier. They talk about it in the 4473, things like that. So Clarence Thomas dissented, and he just basically just mopped the floor with them with his dissent, but of course he was the only one. I have the entire thing. It's like 103 pages with the Supreme Court's ruling, and they go in and they just rip it apart. They talk about District of Columbia versus Heller, because they were trying to say, they were arguing the defense for Rahimi that there is no historical context to, if you have a restraining order or you threaten someone with a gun or anything like that, that you lose your Second Amendment right. And they went on to say basically that, text, history, and tradition, yes, there is. Honestly, there isn't, though. If you read the dissent from Clarence Thomas, like I said, he just rakes him across the coal. There are ways to strip somebody of their rights. All right? That's what Clarence Thomas says. He goes, you are right. I consent that. Those are baked into the Constitution. And they are. Okay? However, all of them involve facing your accuser, a jury of your peers, and going through the court process, having a hearing, things like that, where you're able to defend yourself. And if you are found guilty, then yes, there are tools within our Constitution that allow for the authorities, the state, whatever you want to call it, to strip you of certain rights, including your Second Amendment right. That was the crux of it, though. Rahimi didn't get to face his accuser. He did not have a day in court originally, and he was just stripped of everything. He could not defend himself. It was just, you are guilty and we don't care. And that plays into what we have in Connecticut, right? So we understand that Connecticut has red flag laws. We've had them for years. They've tried to challenge them in the courts and no success there. The red flag law used to read that a state's attorney or two police officers may file a complaint for seizure of firearms or ammunition. So basically it took two cops or a state's attorney to go to the court, go to a judge, and say, listen, this person here is a shitbag. They did this, 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 and this, and we need to take their guns away. We need to revoke their permit, so on and so forth. Okay. It wasn't just one cop, two cops. So they had to, they had to basically conspire, right? Be on the same page and agree and say, yes, this person is a threat to society, so on and so forth. The problem with that was they felt like it didn't move fast enough, or someone might slip through the cracks, so they wanted to strengthen, to bolster that law here in Connecticut. So, as of September 1st, 2021, the law changed. So in Connecticut, now it can be a family member, it could be a social worker, it could be a healthcare worker, clergy, or another concerned community member. So let's break these down. All right? A family member. So I know family dynamics can be complicated sometimes. Sometimes you don't get along with certain members of your family, not even immediate. It could be like a cousin. Especially if you have views one way and they have views another way, through spite, and it's not supposed to be like this, but you know damn well it gets abused like that. Through spite, just to get to you, they can go and tell the courts, like, he's a danger to himself and to others, he's said these things, blah, blah, blah. And you're going to lose everything, right? It's pretty messed up. It's very, it's like how they used to do it in the USSR, right? You'd have an apartment complex because nobody owned homes. Everybody just lived in an apartment. So you'd be on your little cell block, right? Because that's what they look like. And you may have an argument with your neighbor, right? Maybe they're too loud at night or whatever. And you guys just bicker back and forth, back and forth. Finally, either your neighbor will go, you know what? I'm going to go to the government. And they go to the state. And they're like, listen, he's been saying things that go against our government, that go against the Soviet Union, right? That are anti-communist or whatever. And then the next day, magically, that apartment of the neighbor would just be empty, all cleared out. People are just gone. They disappeared. They've been spirited away somewhere, because that's how it worked, right? No human rights. Boom. So that's where you're at today. A family member. And if you piss off the wrong family member, living up here in New England, Connecticut especially, obviously you're watching this channel because you're into the Second Amendment. You like guns. I like guns. My family likes guns, but I do have family members that don't like guns. So, not trying to put ideas in anyone's head, but hey, this is how it can work, right? A social worker. It's enough about that one. I'm not going to diss on the social workers. Healthcare worker. That'd be your doctor. Have you noticed sometimes you go get your annual physical or whatever, and one of the questions they ask is, do you have firearms at home or access to firearms? It's none of their damn business. All right, and unless you're like suicidal or a real menace to society, um, you know, it's really nobody's business. And some of these horrible mass shooting attacks that have happened over the past couple of years, um, comes out later on that they were known to local law enforcement. They were known to the FBI, and they just kind of fell through the cracks. And that's their excuse to pass more and more dystopian laws. So there's that. Clergy, right? Because we confess to our clergy members, mainly if you're, Christian, Catholic, things like that, and you go to confession or whatever. Today's church ain't the church I grew up in. So you might have this, liberal, woke clergy member, and they don't like the fact that you have guns or you have access to guns, and they're going to make a complaint. I like just any other concerned community member. That could be anyone. That could be someone you don't even know. Right? That's why when I teach the pistol classes and we're talking about the things that can get your permit revoked, I always talk about road rage and arguing with your neighbors, things like that. Okay? Because you have a road rage moment and you say some stuff off the cuff. I mean, you don't really mean it, but you're just angry, you're pissed, but it comes off as threatening. All right? So the other person who was getting yelled at, so on and so forth, can get your license plate number, give that to the police and say, hey, he was making threats to me. He was threatening my well-being, things like that, or threatening my family. Your license plate is linked to your driver's license. That driver's license is linked to your permit. So there you go. There's a line. You fly off the cuff, you say some bad things, and you could end up losing your permit and your guns and all your ammunition. All right? These people are able to notify courts directly about a person who is in possession of a firearm or has threatened to harm someone, like I just explained. So, there you go. All right? It also goes on to say, these people or another person can ask the court to issue an order to remove firearms from the possession of that person issuing such a threats or committing acts of violence. All right? And this is Connecticut Code 2938C. That's the quick gist of it. So, all types of people now can go and tell the courts under sworn affidavit, right? Because if they're lying, they should be held accountable for lying and then be punished by the fullest extent of the law to discourage abuse of this. But that's not how it happens. And you and I know that it's never, they're going to abuse it. You're going to lose it. It's going to take you years and tons of money going through the court system to get your permit back. And nothing will happen to the person that accused you. All right? That's just how it is. This also includes, coming all the way back to Rahimi, in Connecticut, if you are married and you and your spouse decide you want to get a divorce, okay? Whether, it could be for any reason. Spouse cheats, you just fell out of love, be amicable, right? You're just like, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. And your spouse is like, yeah, I don't want to do it anymore. So you're going to file for divorce. Most of the time, as soon as someone files, their divorce attorney applies for a restraining order. What happens when you get a restraining order? You lose your permit, your guns, and your ammunition. You've done nothing wrong. You're not threatening anyone. You're just like, I'm getting divorced, whatever. But because that restraining order has been placed on you, you now are going to lose everything. Um, Obviously, your divorce attorney is going to put a restraining order on the other spouse. Now, even if that spouse didn't agree with it, said, I didn't know this was going to happen, I never asked for it to happen, you know, you and I, the party that's getting divorced, we're still cool, we're friends, it's amicable. It doesn't matter. The divorce attorney filed the paperwork, boom, it's done, it's gone. So, right, I mean, for someone in my position where I have a permit, I have plenty of firearms, my spouse, Mrs. Guru, has her permit and a ton of guns too. So it's mutually assured destruction. One, we've been married 22 years. We don't really believe in divorce except for very minor, um, I shouldn't say minor, very few reasons, right? Arguments those don't count, which we really never argue. But outside of like cheating, um, there's really no reason that constitutes a divorce. I think too many people these days just kind of give up uh, in their marriages, right? It's not like when they were dating, which a lot of people think marriage is like dating. No, marriage is hard work sometimes. You have your ups and your downs. It's you took an oath in sickness and in health, for richer and for poorer. So sometimes you got good times and you got the bad times, and you get through it together. But a lot of people just want to give up on it these days. I don't know. I think it's just a generational thing. It's kind of encouraged throughout social media and other government entities. Divorce is encouraged. But when this happens, like I was talking about, those restraining orders are going to be pulled and placed on you without even your knowledge. You're not going to be able to do anything about it, and you're going to lose everything. So keep that in mind. Um, the big thing is, with our red flag laws and all that stuff, you're not even going to know any of this is happening until one day when you hear at your door, if they even knock, and you're issued either like a summons, you're issued a restraining order. But there's plenty of times police just do a no knock, and they're coming to take your guns. Um, it's not a guarantee, but how many times have you seen the news where the police do a no knock and somebody gets hurt or dead? I know the last time, but this is going back a long time. No, it's when I first got my permit here in Connecticut. I was standing in line at SLFU to fill out my little postcard and get my permit. And way back, at the end of the big hallway I was in, there was just some dude sitting on a couch, and there was an officer sitting next to him with some paperwork, and they were like, "Listen, you got a restraining order. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing we can do. You have to forfeit your firearms. You have to get rid of them. So you can either transfer them to someone who's eligible, right? They must have a permit, things like that. You can surrender them to the state police. You're never going to get those back. You can transfer them to an FFL for storage. And I don't know any FFLs in Connecticut that are into long-term storage of your firearms. But those are about it. I mean, you've got to divest from that. You have to get those firearms out of your name, and you have to put them somewhere to where you're not going to have access to them, and they're gone. Excuse me. They're pretty much gone forever, or until at least you get everything cleared up. But even then, everything could be cleared up. But it's not a guarantee you will get your permit back, and without your permit, you will not be able to get your firearms back, especially if they're at an FFL or you surrender them to the state police. Which, if you surrender them to the state police, I'm pretty sure they're just going to end up getting destroyed. Let's say we transfer them to a friend. That friend knowingly or cannot knowingly transfer those firearms back to you if you don't have a permit, because you're ineligible. Now, this is looking through the lens of when here in Connecticut we could do private transfers, right? We used to be able to just fill out the DPS-3s between me and, my friend. We could just call up SLFU, get a transfer number, put it down on the DPS-3s, make sure we send those off everywhere they need to go, and it was done. That has been stopped. We're the only state where that's been stopped. But we're playing ball. Well, the state is. Just because when we were doing these private transfers via the state, you were getting ran through the NICS system. And the ATF came out and said, people, the general public, they're not allowed to use the NICS system. It's only meant for FFLs and things like that. So, state of Connecticut said, you got it, boss, and no more private transfers. Now, living in other states, like West Virginia, under their current law, they could transfer privately guns as long as the person that's transferring the firearm to whoever knows they are not a prohibited person and things like that, right? Because that itself is a crime. But you live out, in Appalachia, out in the boonies, and your neighbor needs a gun. You've got like 4 or 5 of that particular type of gun. You can just be like, hey, buddy, I get, the power grid's down, the storm's coming in, or whatever. Here, you give me $600 and I'll give you this AR. That's okay, because the 4473 that was originally used to purchase that gun is at the FFL, and that's where it stays for 25 years. Then the FFL has the option to either put it in dead storage or send that to the ATF. The problem with that is if it gets lost in transit, it's not the ATF's fault. It's going to be the FFL's fault. If the ATF loses the paperwork, it's not their fault. It's always going to be the FFL's fault. So most FFLs tend to hold on to these. A few FFLs I know definitely. They have them way back to the early 70s. That all being said, in Connecticut we have that DPS-3, right? That means that the gun you've purchased in that DPS-3 is like your title. It tags you in the system. It's a registry. The state knows you have that gun, and in order to get that DPS changed over, like a title to a car, you have to call them and let them know this gun is coming out of my name and going into someone else's name. And that's the point of the DPS-3. They can track the guns. They know who's got the guns, who doesn't have the guns, who transfers guns, things like that. It's just an extra layer of this dystopian shithole you live in. Normal free states don't have these extra forms. They just do the 4473 with the NICS check, etc. And after a few years or whatever, you're like, I don't want this gun anymore. You can do a private sale and just get rid of it. Now, the federal government recently has been trying to stop the private transfer, private sales of guns with not just trying to pass laws, which we know those laws are going to die in committee and they'll never make it to the floor as long as Republicans honor their oath to office and stop that type of stuff. But the ATF just did a rule change talking about transferring guns, this, that, and the other thing, and having to have to be an FFL, which will create a paper trail of guns coming in, guns coming out in the A&D log, 4473s, things like that. That is their beginning backdoor registry BS. So be prepared for that. It's all being challenged in the courts, but we know how long that stuff takes. This Rahimi case has been going on for years, and I'm surprised the Supreme Court even took it up. But besides my ramblings, you can see how this U.S. Supreme Court case affects, or doesn't really affect, the red flag laws that we have here in Connecticut. So Rahimi got a restraining order and lost everything, and the Supreme Court just 8-1 upheld that, saying, yes, you're a dangerous individual. you can lose your Second Amendment right and probably never get it back. Connecticut takes it a step further. You don't need due process. You don't need to see your accuser. You don't need to actually commit a crime. You can just piss off a family member, a social worker, a healthcare worker, clergy, or some other concerned community member who can then go to the courts and say he or she is a danger to themselves or to others or a combination of both and should have their guns forcibly removed, even though you've not committed any crimes, you've never gotten a day in court, and there is no proof that you've done actually anything wrong. That's dystopian. Welcome to Connecticut, where they hate you for liking guns, right? But King Lamont says crime is down, so I guess all these laws work. They don't, but that's the lie they tell everybody, and he keeps getting elected. So that's all I have for you this video. It's amazing. I was absolutely awesome to be able to do this in one take, which is rare, but now I'm going to go get ready for a graduation party we're heading off to, and busy times. I will see you guys in the next video. Hit up the comments below. Let me know what you guys think. I'll talk to you later.